The galaxy was vast, but the Galactic Empire sought to make it small under its heel. For centuries, they had expanded, crushing weaker systems and bending others to their will. Their star-spanning fleet stood as a testament to their dominance, and the Emperor himself was worshipped as a god by billions. To them, humanity was an anomaly, an audacious upstart that refused to submit. Humanity's homeworld, Earth, was a distant blip in the galaxy's map, but their defiance loomed large. Against all odds, the humans had held their ground, relying on ingenuity and an uncanny ability to endure. The Empire, seeing their refusal to submit as an affront, escalated a minor border dispute into open hostility. Tension simmered until the unthinkable happened. An Imperial patrol frigate destroyed a human mining vessel near the contested zone. A ceasefire meeting was arranged in neutral space, more to placate galactic opinion than to sincerely resolve the issue. Both sides prepared for the encounter with equal measures of caution and disdain. The Empire's delegation, led by General Kale Drask and Admiral Thorn, arrived aboard the ineffable Dominion, an imposing dreadnought bristling with weaponry. The humans sent one man. John Reeves stepped off the shuttle, clad in a simple black suit that seemed at odds with the grandeur of the Imperial vessel. He carried no visible weapons, no entourage, and no apparent fear. His appearance was unremarkable: short, cropped hair, a weathered face, and piercing gray eyes that seemed to miss nothing. If the Empire had hoped for a display of human power, this solitary figure was a disappointment. General Drask sneered as Reeves approached. A towering man with a square jaw and cold blue eyes, Drask epitomized the Empire's military elite. His uniform was immaculate, and his medals gleamed under the artificial lights of the docking bay. "So, this is the great human diplomat," Drask said, his voice dripping with derision. "I expected more spectacle." Reeves stopped, his hands clasped behind his back. "Spectacle is a poor substitute for substance, General." The words were spoken softly, yet they seemed to echo through the cavernous space. A flicker of annoyance crossed Drask's face, but Admiral Thorn, standing nearby, chuckled. Unlike Drask, Thorn was wiry and calculating, his thin lips curling into an amused smirk. "Ah, the humans do have a flair for drama," Thorn said. "Let's hope your words are as sharp as your tongue, Mr. Reeves. You'll need them to justify your people's reckless defiance." Reeves tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "I thought we were here to discuss peace." "Peace," Drask barked, stepping closer. "Peace is earned, not demanded. Your people are fortunate we're even entertaining the charade." Reeves' gaze shifted, taking in the dozens of armed guards flanking the Imperials. The tension was palpable, but his demeanor remained calm, almost detached. "Then let's dispense with the charade and speak plainly," he said. "Humanity isn't interested in servitude, General. If you seek submission, you'll find resistance instead." Drask's face darkened, but before he could respond, Thorn raised a hand. "Enough posturing," the Admiral said. "Let's proceed to the negotiation chamber. After all, we're civilized beings, are we not?" The group moved through the corridors of the ineffable Dominion, its cold, metallic interiors reflecting the Empire's utilitarian philosophy. Reeves walked at the center, his footsteps measured and deliberate. He appeared unaffected by the veiled threats whispered by the guards or the disdainful glares from Drask. As they entered the chamber, Reeves was directed to a seat at a long table. On the far end sat Drask and Thorn, flanked by aides and holographic displays. The walls hummed faintly with the ship's energy, a reminder of the power surrounding him. Drask leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. "Let's be clear, human. The only reason you're still breathing is because the Emperor sees some value in keeping your species around. Push us too far, and we'll extinguish your little flame before it grows into a blaze." Reeves met his gaze, unflinching. "Extinguishing flames can be tricky, General. Sometimes they spark something you can't control." Thorn interjected, his tone lighter but no less threatening. "Tell me, Mr. Reeves, Do you truly believe humanity can stand against us? Or is this defiance a desperate bluff? Reeves smiled faintly, the first sign of emotion he'd shown. Belief isn't required, Admiral. History speaks for itself. Small forces can topple empires when pushed far enough. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like a shroud. Drask's fist clenched, but Thorn's expression shifted, part curiosity, part unease. The human's confidence was unsettling, and they couldn't determine if it stemmed from ignorance or knowledge of something they had overlooked. After a moment, Drask stood abruptly. Enough of this farce. Guards, take him to the holding bay. Let's see how defiant he is when he's facing an airlock. The guards moved in, their weapons drawn, but Reeves remained seated, his eyes cold and calculating. You should reconsider, he said quietly. Drask laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. Reconsider? You're in no position to. The lights flickered, and a low rumble reverberated through the ship. Alarms blared as the ship's system stuttered. The guards hesitated, their confidence wavering. Reeves stood slowly, his movements deliberate. You were saying, General? Drask's face twisted in rage. What is this? What did you do? Reeves adjusted his cuffs, his expression calm. Consider it a lesson in underestimating humanity. The room plunged into chaos as the alarms grew louder. Drask barked orders, but his voice was drowned out by the rising cacophony. Reeves stepped back, his figure dissolving into the shadows of the malfunctioning lights. The last thing they saw before the power cut completely was his gray eyes, gleaming like a predator in the dark. The negotiation chamber, now eerily silent after the alarm subsided, felt more like a tomb. Power had been restored, but the tension in the room was electric. General Cale Drask and Admiral Thorn stood flanking their remaining guards, their faces hard masks of contempt and unease. John Reeves had been escorted to the detention deck, though not without incident. 2 guards had been injured while trying to subdue him. Accidents, they called it, though Reeves had barely moved. Now, he stood in a stark interrogation cell, its walls lined with energy barriers pulsing faintly in shades of red. Drask paced outside the cell, his steps heavy and deliberate. Do you know what your problem is, human? He growled, his voice amplified through the comm system. You lack perspective. You believe your insolence is strength, but it's nothing more than a death wish. Reeves stood motionless, his hands clasped behind his back. Is that what you tell yourself, General? That arrogance and brutality are wisdom? His tone was calm, but the edge in his words cut deeper than any weapon. Thorn smirked, leaning against the observation console. You enjoy playing the part of the enigmatic rogue, don't you? But I wonder, does your bravado come from genuine confidence, or are you just biding time, hoping your people will swoop in and save you? Reeves turned his head slightly, his eyes locking onto Thorn's with unsettling intensity. Hope is for those without options. Thorn's smirk faltered, but Drask barked a laugh. Is that so? Let's see what options you have when we broadcast your execution to the galaxy. A message to your kind that defiance leads only to extinction. A guard stepped forward, entering the override code for the cell. As the barriers dropped, Drask drew his sidearm, a ceremonial plasma pistol gleaming in the sterile light. Kneel, he commanded, his voice laced with venom. Reeves did not move. His stillness, unnerving in its calm, filled the room with a palpable weight. I said kneel. Drask barked again, stepping closer. Thorn, sensing something amiss, placed a hand on Drask's shoulder. Wait, something's not right. But it was too late. Reeves moved, a blur of calculated precision. In one fluid motion, he disarmed the nearest guard, snapping the man's wrist with a sickening crack before spinning the weapon into his own hands. A single shot took out the second guard as the others scrambled, their weapons raised. The room erupted in chaos. Drask fired, but Reeves sidestepped, the plasma bolt searing harmlessly past him. He closed the distance between them in an instant, striking Drask's wrist and sending the pistol clattering to the floor. With a sharp elbow to the jaw, Reeves sent the general reeling, blood spraying from his split lip. Thorne ducked behind the console, barking orders into his comm, reinforcements to detention block C. Now! The remaining guards hesitated, their training at odds with the growing panic in their eyes. Reeves used the momentary lapse, vaulting over a control panel and taking cover as bolts of plasma scorched the air around him. Grabbing a stun baton from a fallen guard, he emerged like a shadow from the corner, disarming and incapacitating 2 more soldiers with ruthless efficiency. Drask, regaining his footing, shouted, "Don't just stand there, kill him!" But fear had taken root. Reeves wasn't just a man. He was a force of nature. Every strike, every shot, every movement was precise, efficient, and deadly. It was as if he had choreographed the encounter in his mind before it began. "Who are you?" Thorne hissed, his voice trembling as he emerged from his cover, a plasma rifle in his hands. Reeves turned to face him, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Thorne saw something primal in those gray eyes, something that didn't belong in a diplomat. "I'm the consequence," Reeves said simply. Thorne fired, but Reeves anticipated the shot, sidestepping and throwing the stun baton with unerring accuracy. It struck Thorne's shoulder, and the rifle slipped from his grasp. Before Thorne could react, Reeves was upon him, his hand closing around the Admiral's throat. "Call them off," Reeves commanded, his voice low and deadly. Thorne gasped, clawing at the iron grip. "Why, you'll die for this," he sputtered. "Wrong answer." Reeves drove a knee into Thorne's stomach and released him, letting the Admiral collapse in a heap. The sound of boots echoed in the corridor. Reinforcements. Reeves glanced at the entry point, calculating. He moved to the console Thorne had used, his fingers flying across the controls. The energy barriers around the other cells deactivated, and prisoners of various species spilled into the corridor, sowing confusion as they overpowered the incoming guards. Drask, still dazed, watched in horror as his flagship descended into chaos. "You'll pay for this," he roared, struggling to his feet. Reeves turned to him, his expression colder than the void outside. "You already are." Before Drask could respond, Reeves activated a ship-wide announcement channel. His voice rang out across the ineffable dominion, calm yet commanding. "To the crew of this vessel, your leaders have betrayed you. Stand down, and you'll live to see another sunrise. Resist, and you'll share their fate." Drask lunged for a weapon, but Reeves was faster. With a single shot, he disabled the general's leg, sending him sprawling to the floor. Reeves turned to the console again, his fingers deftly navigating the system. The ineffable Dominion shuddered as he disabled critical systems, locking out the command structure. Lights flickered, and the hum of engines began to falter. Thorne, clutching his side, stared at Reeves with a mix of rage and fear. "You think this is over? You've only delayed the inevitable." Reeves leaned in, his voice a quiet storm. "You attacked humanity, thinking we were weak. You thought wrong." He stepped away, disappearing into the shadows as more alarms blared. The sounds of chaos, shouting, weapons fire, and the distant rumble of failing systems filled the air. Reeves had set the stage for his escape, leaving the Imperials to reckon with the storm he had unleashed. But this was far from over. The corridors of the ineffable Dominion were chaos incarnate. Alarms blared in deafening cycles, mingling with the clash of weapons and the shouts of terrified crew members. Jonathan Reeves moved through the confusion like a ghost, his steps purposeful yet silent. The ship's backup system struggled to keep pace with the cascading failures he'd engineered. Each malfunction meticulously planned to dismantle the Empire's flagship from within. The ship's soldiers, once symbols of Imperial dominance, now cower behind barricades hastily erected in the main passageways. Reeves had ensured their disarray, disrupting communications and locking entire squads in isolated compartments. Every engagement with the man had ended in quick, brutal efficiency. For those fortunate enough to survive, Tales of the human diplomat had transformed into whispers of the Baba Yaga. In the command center, Admiral Thorne had regrouped with a few officers still loyal or terrified enough to fight. His face was pale, a mixture of fury and fear etched into his sharp features. "Report!" he barked at a trembling technician. "Primary systems are compromised," the technician stammered. "Reactor levels are unstable, and we've lost control of the security grid." Thorne slammed his fist onto the console. "How is one man doing this? Where are the reinforcements?" General Cale Drask, limping and bloody but still defiant, stepped into the room, his voice a harsh rasp. "Reinforcements won't help. He's not just a man." Thorne turned sharply. "What are you saying?" Drask sank into a chair, clutching his injured leg. "That's not a diplomat out there. That's a myth. He's the Baba Yaga, humanity's ghost, their executioner. We thought he was just a story, but he's real." Thorne stared at him, disbelief warring with dread. The tales of the Baba Yaga were whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy, a phantom operative who had single-handedly ended wars and dismantled entire organizations. To the Empire, such a figure was dismissed as propaganda, a cautionary tale to frighten wayward officers. Now, Thorne wasn't so sure. The lights flickered, and the room plunged into semi-darkness. A new sound echoed through the chamber. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. The officers froze, their breaths shallow. Thorne reached for his sidearm, his fingers trembling as he pointed it toward the shadows. "Show yourself," he demanded, his voice cracking. Reeves emerged, his silhouette sharp against the dim emergency lighting. His suit was torn, streaked with ash and blood. Not his own. He moved with the grace of a predator, his gray eyes fixed on Thorne with an intensity that made the Admiral's skin crawl. "Admiral Thorne," Reeves said evenly, "we need to talk." Thorne raised his weapon, but Reeves was faster. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a small blade spinning through the air, striking the pistol and knocking it to the ground. Thorne flinched, his confidence unraveling. "You've done enough damage," Thorne spat, his voice thin. "What do you want?" Reeves stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "I want you to understand what happens when you betray humanity. You saw us as weak, as prey. That was your first mistake." Drask struggled to stand, his defiance flickering. "You think this changes anything? The Empire will crush you. You're nothing more than an anomaly." Reeves turned his gaze to the general, his expression unreadable. Anomaly? Perhaps. But anomalies change the course of history. He moved to the central console, his fingers dancing over the controls. The ship shuddered violently as another system overloaded, sending sparks raining from overhead panels. Reeves activated the ship-wide comm system, his voice calm and steady. "To the crew of the ineffable Dominion, evacuate immediately. Your leaders have failed you. Continuing to fight is futile." Thorne lunged toward Reeves, desperation in his eyes. "You'll destroy us all." Reeves caught him mid-charge, twisting the Admiral's arm and slamming him into the console. "Your survival isn't my concern," he said coldly. "But you will deliver a message." Before Thorne could respond, a warning klaxon blared. The ship's main reactor was nearing critical levels, a result of the calculated sabotage Reeves had set in motion. Time was running out. "You're insane," Thorne hissed. Reeves released him and turned toward the exit. Insanity is picking a fight with someone who doesn't lose. As Reeves disappeared into the smoke-filled corridor, Thorne crumpled to the ground, his breath ragged. Drask struggled to his feet, his voice hoarse. "He's going to kill us all. We need to abandon ship." Thorne nodded numbly, his mind racing. "Prepare the escape pods. We'll deal with him later." But even as the words left his lips, he knew the truth. The Empire's dominance had been shattered, not by a fleet, but by one man. Reeves sat in silence, the stolen Imperial fighter gliding smoothly away from the crumbling dreadnought. Through the viewport, he watched as the ineffable Dominion began to disintegrate, explosions rippling across its hull like fireflies in the void. A voice crackled over the comm system. "Reeves, do you copy?" He pressed a button, his tone neutral. "I'm here." The voice on the other end belonged to a human official, his words tinged with relief. "We're tracking your signal. Good work out there." "Is that what you call it?" Reeves muttered. There was a pause. The galaxy needed to see this. The Empire needed to see this. They won't underestimate us again. Reeves stared out at the wreckage, his expression unreadable. They'll do more than underestimate us. They'll fear us. And fear breeds worse things. The comm went silent, and Reeves leaned back, his gray eyes reflecting the distant glow of the dying ship. The Imperial Council Hall was a stark contrast to the chaos that had consumed the ineffable Dominion. Here, silence reigned, broken only by the occasional whisper of advisors clustered in shadowed alcoves. The air was heavy with tension as the Emperor, seated upon his throne of obsidian and gold, listened to the report of Admiral Thorne. The Admiral, still bruised and nursing a bandaged shoulder, stood at attention, his voice steady despite the humiliation seething beneath the surface. "Your Excellency, the ineffable Dominion has been lost. The human operative, Jonathan Reeves, escaped after sabotaging the reactor." The Emperor leaned forward, his eyes gleaming like molten gold. "And you bring me this failure as if it is news." His voice was a low growl, more dangerous than any shout. Thorne's jaw tightened. "It was no ordinary failure, Your Excellency. This man, Reeves, he's not just a soldier. He dismantled our flagship with nothing but precision and ingenuity." The crew called him Baba Yaga. The Emperor's gaze darkened at the name. "A ghost story," he said dismissively, though there was a flicker of unease. "The humans have always relied on myth to bolster their weakness." "Not this time," Thorne pressed. "This time, the myth was real." The Emperor rose from his throne, his towering figure casting a long shadow over the chamber. "Then we shall turn myth into ash. Prepare the fleets. I will burn their worlds and scatter their remnants across the void." Before Thorne could respond, a comms officer burst into the hall, his face pale. "Your Excellency, our forward outpost on Rigel Prime has fallen." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Fallen? How?" "Reports indicate sabotage, Your Excellency. The humans—" "Enough!" the Emperor roared, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "Send word to all sectors. I want this Reeves found and destroyed. Humanity will learn the price of defiance." 2 weeks later, the Imperial fleet descended upon Terra Nova, a critical human colony and symbol of their defiance. The Emperor had brought an armada, a display of overwhelming force designed to send a message not just to humanity, but to the entire galaxy. But the humans were waiting. From concealed bunkers and orbital platforms, humanity's fleet emerged like vipers striking from the shadows. The Empire's ships, sleek and menacing, clashed with humanity's vessels, uglier, smaller, but built with a resilience that mirrored their creators. Amid the chaos, Reeves operated on the ground, his movements hidden by the terrain and the confusion of battle. He was not alone this time. A small team of human operatives moved with him, their loyalty unwavering. Reeves crouched beside a communications array, his fingers deftly inputting codes to disrupt the Imperial fleet's coordination. The device hummed, then crackled as signals broke apart into static. Above them, Imperial ships veered off course, colliding or spiraling into defensive fire. "Targets neutralized," came a voice over his earpiece. "Good," Reeves replied. "Move to the next objective." A shadow passed overhead as an Imperial gunship roared by, its cannons targeting the human defenses. Reeves glanced skyward, his expression unreadable. "They're doubling down." "They always do," said a voice behind him. Lieutenant Marcus Vren, one of his team members, approached, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "But this time, they're playing our game." Reeves nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. And we don't lose. In the midst of the battle, the Emperor himself descended onto the surface, flanked by his elite guard. Clad in ceremonial armor that glowed with an eerie crimson light, he exuded power and command. His eyes scanned the battlefield, searching for the human ghost who had dared to humiliate his empire. "He's here," the Emperor said, his voice cold. "I can feel it." The guards spread out, their movements methodical. But Reeves was already watching them, his position hidden within the ruins of an old observatory. Through his scope, he studied the Emperor, a symbol of the oppression he had fought against for so long. "He's baiting us," Vren said quietly, crouched beside him. Reeves lowered the scope, his lips curling into a faint smile. "Let him. The difference between us is that he believes in his invincibility. I don't." As the guards closed in, Reeves and his team struck. Precision fire cut through the elite soldiers, their formations crumbling as the operatives moved like shadows through the ruins. Explosions from pre-placed charges tore through the terrain, forcing the Emperor to retreat into a fortified position. "You cannot hide forever, Reeves," the Emperor bellowed, his voice amplified by his armor. "Face me, and I will grant you a warrior's death." Reeves emerged from the shadows, his movements unhurried. He stood at the edge of the Emperor's perch, his gray eyes unflinching. "You don't grant anything, Your Excellency. You take. And now, I take from you." The Emperor charged, his armor amplifying his speed and strength. But Reeves was faster. With a series of precise movements, he evaded the strikes, his own blows targeting weak points in the Emperor's armor. Sparks flew as metal met resistance, and the Emperor staggered under the assault. "You're nothing but a man," the Emperor roared, swinging his energy blade in a wide arc. "And you're nothing but a tyrant," Reeves replied, ducking under the blade and delivering a final strike. A compact explosive planted directly on the Emperor's chest plate. The explosion sent the Emperor crashing to the ground, his armor smoking and cracked. He struggled to rise, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. "This changes nothing," he spat. "The Empire is eternal." Reeves stepped closer, his shadow falling over the broken figure. "No empire is eternal. They all fall, some faster than others." With one final movement, Reeves deactivated the detonator on his wrist. The charges planted throughout the Imperial command detonated in unison, a cascade of destruction that consumed the Emperor and his forces. The battlefield fell silent as the remaining Imperial forces retreated, their once mighty armada shattered. Terra Nova stood battered but unbroken, a testament to humanity's defiance. Reeves watched from a ridge as the last Imperial ships disappeared into hyperspace. Vren approached, his expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "It's over," Vren said. Reeves shook his head. "No, it's just beginning. The galaxy will remember today, not as the day we survived, but as the day we showed them who we are." He turned and walked away, his silhouette fading into the rising dawn.